I know that a lot of this seems like it is really just about aesthetics, but when I say it's aesthetics with a purpose, what I mean by that is that we are so fickle as an audience and we are so distracted. It just takes a moment of, wow, that looks weird. What is he or she wearing? And then we're out. It's that easy. And once somebody is out, it is very, 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 very hard to bring them back in.
Hi, I'm Kerry Barrett. And once again, thank you for joining me for the Kerry Barrett Show. I did a post last week, earlier this week, as a matter of fact, about dressing for your on camera appearance. Again, whether it's social, whether you're hosting a global town hall, and what those best practices are. And actually had a number of questions come in about them. And actually, a number of you have asked questions about how to show up on camera during those market research interviews that I've been conducting. So I figured this was a good opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into how to show up in your best physical self when you are in front of the lens. And while you may think of your clothing or your background or your hair or your makeup or whatever it may be as simply aesthetics, I always like to describe them as aesthetics with a purpose. And the purpose is to create credibility, authority, but also to create visual interest, to create maybe a pattern interrupt. If people are scrolling through their social feeds, we see a lot of black and navy blue. I'll talk about why those aren't the best colors to wear on camera, even though they're very flattering in person. And so it is aesthetics, but it's aesthetics rather with a purpose beyond simply looking good, if you will. And let me talk about that for a second. When you are in front of the camera, and if you don't know my background, I was in TV on camera for close to 20 years. And I finished my career in New York City at WNBC, and we had a team of stylists there. And I remember talking to one while I was obviously still in the news industry, and we were talking about what to wear at a particular event that was coming up for media. And we were debating, what I should wear. And she said the best way to blend into the crowd and not stand out is to wear navy blue or black. And not only did that inform my decision about what to wear that evening, but it also informed my decision about what to wear when I showed up on camera. Now, yes, we did have a little bit of help, but they really advised us not to wear darker colors, or at least not to wear them regularly, because they don't catch people's eye. And for the most part, unfortunately, what you see in the news is very often negative. And so wearing darker colors emphasized that negativity. Obviously, navy blue and black aren't inherently negative, but they have a connotation of having a more somber or serious aesthetic. And you may be in an industry such as finance or insurance or law where that serious aesthetic is important. And we'll talk about how you can mitigate some of that with showing up on camera in a way that grabs people's attention. And so w- you'll see when you watch news that most people are dressed in, especially the women, in brighter colors. There's reds, there's purples, there's maybe bright pink like this, yellow, green, etc. There's not a lot of solid black or navy blue. Now, let me dive into first why white, black, and to some degree navy blue aren't the best choices, period, when you're showing up on camera. And it's because black and white specifically tend to not be the most flattering on camera. And they can exacerbate situations that have to do with your virtual studio. Now, in my news days, when I was sitting in the desk, we had gobs of professional studio lights, and they were adjusted for individuals seated in certain spots on the desk. And your makeup was applied with those lights and your attire in mind, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole team of people. So you could wear black or white and it would look okay. However, for the most part, when we're showing up on camera or when we're showing up on a stage, we don't generally have that sort of glam squad around us. So we have to keep in mind that there may be lighting issues, there may be background issues, and we need to plan for that. And so black absorbs all the light. So if you're in a dark setting, it is going to look especially dark. White, the same thing, except white reflects light. So if you are in a bright setting or a dark setting, the iris is going to have trouble figuring out what it should focus on. You will show up in various shades of gray and perhaps blue, and the iris will be going back and forth trying to find that sweet spot. And it won't ever find it because you don't have somebody adjusting it for you, generally speaking, if you're doing a live stream or you're on social media, something like that. And so avoid black and white, aside from the fact that white reflects light. So it generally tends to make us look a little bit bigger. And black, although slimming in person, it's very hard to see the sort of outline of your torso or your arms. So black, while slimming again in person, can sort of make us look like a bit of a blob when we are on camera. And that's the other thing to keep in mind. The reason it does that is because the camera and the lens, by their very nature, take somebody who is 3D and they put them in this 2D window. There's lack of context and there's lack of dimension. So while you're walking down the street or you're in person and you can clearly see there's a body underneath the clothes, on camera, it doesn't always come across that way. So my general suggestions are if you're going to be showing up on camera and you want to make sure that you've mitigated for any possible lighting and background situations, that you are going to look your very best, and that you have a color on that creates visual interest and perhaps stops the scroll or gives an opportunity to stop the scroll when somebody's on social media. Avoid, here's the takeaway, black, white, and navy blue. If you have a brand color that's bright, absolutely feel free to wear that. Women, you generally, if we're talking about traditional norms, have a few more options here than men do. We can wear a sweater set, we can wear a blouse, we can wear a blazer. I don't necessarily suggest showing up in your living room on social media in a blazer or a suit. That's not really how we communicate any longer. But if you're hosting something that's more formal, panel discussion or hybrid or in person event, that might be something to consider. Jewel tones, brand colors, blue is universally flattering. Now, I know I said steer clear of navy. However, there are a million other shades of blue that are universally flattering. There is not a single person, I don't think, on this planet that doesn't look good in some shade of blue. So if you are ever in doubt, men, about what button down shirt to wear or what zip up sweater to wear or what cardigan to wear. Women, this applies to you. There is some shade of blue out there that is going to look good on you. Now, aside from colors, if you are in a more stoic or traditional industry, you are in finance, you are in insurance, you are in the legal field to some degree, you're probably not, unless you've built your entire personal brand, you're probably not going to show up in something like this. This is a color that's perhaps a little bit better for those who are in a more creative field, PR, marketing, something along those lines, coaching. The way that you can get around wearing a navy blue blazer or a navy blue cardigan or sweater or set or whatever the case may be is to wear a pop of color underneath. So, men, this may mean a light blue button down with a tie that has some color to it, appropriate color. Women, this may mean wearing a navy blue blazer or sweater with a necklace that has some color in it, or a blouse or a shell underneath that has a pop of color to it, so that you are creating that visual interest, if you will, without overpowering the seriousness or the stoicism of whatever industry that you may be in. If you have questions about exactly where that fine line is, by all means, DM me, send me a screenshot, ask them here in the comments, and I will give you some advice that's custom tailored to what you're using video for and what your particular niche or industry is. The other thing to avoid for the most part is patterns. Now, I love patterns, and you will see me on some of my social media posts or even on my website wearing a pattern. But that's because I've had some training with a stylist and I've spent so long learning just by osmosis what looks good on camera, and I understand my lighting and my background here very well also. So I do wear patterns occasionally. There's two things you'll never see me wear. Number one is a very, very small print because it's distracting. And depending on the quality of your camera, a small print can moray. Moray is when you see somebody in front of the camera and it looks like their shirt is moving. It happens oftentimes with houndstooth or very small polka dots or very small checks. It's distracting. You'll even see it on network news occasionally if an outfit hasn't been vetted, and they do vet them. And so small patterns, again, houndstooth, little checks, sometimes herringbone, small polka dots, those things are out. They don't, there's not a hard and fast rule where they never work in any single case. But if you aren't intimately familiar with your camera, your lighting, your background, if there's not some way that you can screen test that outfit prior, avoid it. The other thing is wearing patterns when you are wearing fitted clothing. So, for example, women, this probably applies to you a little bit more. If you are wearing a fitted or a knit dress that has a pattern on it, oftentimes, because we have different bodies than men, those patterns expand or distort or morph a little bit when they're not on the hanger and they're actually on our body, right? And this explains perhaps a little bit why models are so thin. They want the clothing to stand out, if it's patterned especially, right? So it doesn't morph or distort or whatever on the model's body. So while something may look fantastic on a hanger, if you put it on your body and you show up on camera, that cool flower that sits, right here may look a little bit weird, distracting, odd when you are on camera. So if you're wearing knit clothing, I would avoid patterns altogether. In terms of how your clothing should fit, generally speaking, yes, it is something that is fitted. And it's not just because and you'll watch women on the news and it seems like their dresses are painted on and sometimes it feels that way. The reason is because cameras add, as we all know, a couple of pounds. And when something is bulky and not fitted, not only does it exacerbate that, and there's nothing wrong with having a couple of pounds, but most of us don't necessarily enjoy that. We want to look the way that we actually look in real life. And that usually doesn't include extra pounds. I'm trying to put this as delicately as possible. So, fitted clothing not only emphasizes what we actually look like, but it makes it clear that there's a body under the clothes. Again, there's so much context that's lost, and I'm probably getting a little bit into the weeds trying to explain why all of this stuff is the way that it is, but I'm trying to give a little bit of knowledge as well so that when you may be looking in your closet or picking something out to wear to get in front of the lens, whether it's a global town hall or a keynote or a virtual event or just for a social media post, you have a little bit of knowledge with which you can use to filter what might make a good choice. And so fitted clothes are generally better. I like to keep a stack of cashmere or thin knit sweaters next to my computer in all sorts of different colors. Usually I wear a V-neck. I find that that's a little bit more flattering. And a couple of pairs of earrings in silver and gold. And that way, when I have to throw something on and look put together very quickly, I have something that I can do exactly that with. Listen, most of the time I'm in sweatpants and leggings and it's business from the waist up. And then, I might still be in pajama pants from the waist down. So keep something like that next to you, ready to go, and you will look put together at all times. The other thing that you may want to avoid is turtlenecks. And I'm a big fan of them. But again, with the camera distorting, distracting, taking 3D, turning it into 2D, oftentimes the turtleneck, especially one that is thick or chunky, heavy knit, cable knit, it makes it hard for it doesn't look like you have a neck. It's just a head sort of sitting on top of your shoulders. And I know that a lot of this seems like it is really just about aesthetics. But when I say it's aesthetics with a purpose, what I mean by that is that we are so fickle as an audience and we are so distracted. It just takes a moment of, wow, that looks weird. What is he or she wearing? And then we're out. It's that easy. And once somebody is out, it is very, 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 very hard to bring them back in. So you want to leverage your appearance in front of the lens and use every opportunity you can to not just get their attention, to make sure that it stays there as well. And so don't give them a reason to get distracted. Don't give them a reason to turn away. It isn't a hard science. It's a little bit of science. It's a little bit of art. It's figuring out what works for you, what you like, what you feel comfortable with, and also what works for your audience. The other thing to think about is meeting your audience where they are in terms of what you wear. And I'll give a very obvious example to make it clear what I'm speaking about. This is likely something that would never actually happen. But let's say you are the owner of a business that works with skilled trades. You own an HVAC company and you are giving a talk or you're hosting a live stream or you are posting a recruiting video and you are looking to talk to skilled HVAC workers, people who might be interested in working for you or joining your company or you're providing education. This is not the time to pull out your three-piece Armani suit. You want to think about what your audience is wearing and meeting them where they are. So, what is somebody who works in HVAC likely to wear during the week when they're working? They're likely to wear clothes that are appropriate for work. Does that mean that you necessarily have to show up in work boots? No. But again, it means it's not the time to show up in your Gucci loafers and your Armani three-piece. Meet your audience where they are. It applies equally if you're talking to people that are stockbrokers or you're talking to people who are investors. Meet them where they are as well. And what that generally means is think about what they're going to be wearing to listen or watch you. And then maybe you're just a skosh more formal. You're just a tad bit more dressed in a professional sense than they are. Maybe it means you're wearing a button down or you put a tie on or you have a pair of khakis or you're wearing um, a dress or a sweater, but not something that is going to off put your audience. So keep in mind where your audience is when you're speaking to them and meet them where they are in terms of their dress as well. One other thing to consider, I told you I was going to keep this one short and sweet. One other thing to consider is if you know your background. If you are appearing on a stage or you are going to appear on someone else's video podcast or live stream, whether you're in person or you are showing up at an event and you're going to be talking there, try and get an idea of the background. I worked with a woman who was doing a lot of public speaking, and she was a part of her town council, her town government, and she was often showing up in municipal buildings, and she was speaking to audiences there. As we all know, municipal buildings tend to be a little bit drab on the inside. They're often in shades of beige rather, or gray. And she was also wearing a lot of beige or gray. And in terms of just creating that visual interest and catching the eye, she was blending in with the background. So, one of the quickest up levels to her physical appearance and her comfort level is to just change. We changed what she was wearing so that there was a little bit of contrast with what was going on behind her. It made her pop. And when she was on a panel discussion, or she was hosting or moderating an event and everybody else was wearing black, gray, or beige, all eyes were on her. And that's what I'm talking about when I say leveraging the opportunity in front of you, making sure that every single thing you're doing is intentional. One of the most, and I'll wrap up with this, and I appreciate those comments. I see them now. One of the biggest mindset shifts, especially for those who are in business as employees, as executives, as founders, is that when you are on camera or when you are on a stage, and this is regardless of who you're in front of and where you're showing up, there is showmanship involved. Any opportunity that you have to speak is a performance. And I don't mean that it's slick. I don't mean that it's disingenuous. I don't mean that it's fluff. What I mean is recognizing that there is a difference between a video that is, or showing up on camera in a way that is compelling, interesting, and memorable, and spitting out data and facts and statistics. We often talk a lot about ourselves. We often like to highlight our credibility through a long, drawn out bio or intro, and then using a lot of big words that we feel highlight our smarts. Here's the thing: the fact that you are in front of that lens or on that stage, credibility is already assumed. It is now yours to lose. And you don't gain it by creating a big hoopla about who you are and your all your achievements and all of your accolades and your degrees and your awards. Those are important to mention at some point. But how you create going from credibility to interest, relatability, memorability, and visibility is by recognizing that you are performing. That means understanding how to use your voice, means understanding how to use your facial expressions and your body language. It means understanding storytelling. You can't spit out data and facts and expect people to remember you and want to work with you. That's just not how it works. Think about it this way: if you were sitting in a small conference room with one person who you know very well, and you're 2 feet away from them and there's no distractions, think about how you would talk to them about a business issue or a pitch or something you were working through. Now imagine having that same dialogue, but you are in a stadium full of 80,000 people who don't know you and whom you do not know and who are distracted by a million other things. The words could be exactly the same, but if you know what you're doing, the way you deliver them is entirely different. It includes storytelling, it includes humor if it works for you. I don't ever advise anybody not to be themselves, but you have to understand that there is showmanship and performance involved every time you step on a stage and every time you get in front of the lens. If you just go up there and matter of factly talk about yourself and spit out, when I work with people, blah, 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 you're not creating an environment or a relationship with them. You're creating a virtual white paper, and that's not what video is all about. I hope that this has been helpful. If you have questions and you're watching this on replay, by all means, go ahead and leave them in the comments or DM me and I will get back to you. I have an entire YouTube channel that is devoted to best practices and tips for showing up on camera and communicating. You can find that at I am Kerry Barrett. And as always, don't hesitate to email me if you have questions as well. Kerry at kerrybarrett.com.